Yeah. In his last
Yeah.
Zoom meeting, it looked really good. I got the feel of this input on this video switcher I'm using. So at any rate, let's kind of go back to.
Yeah, we're still learning. We're still learning.
It's actually a good front end because you can input. I can just throw up. I'm pulling that in off another computer. Actually, let me just show you what I'm doing here. This is what it looks like. So I can control, like this is the computer right here, this gold one, goes to a computer, which has those, everything we were just looking at. I'm inputting the computer as a camera. And then I can, here's 4 cameras. I can do up to 4 cameras and just switch them back and forth. And then I'm using a sound off camera 3, which is this one, which is not that one. That one over there is this camera. So.
Okay.
So at any rate, it allows you to switch your, well, I don't have to, the good thing about this is you don't have to screen share. So now, you know, if you're only screen sharing one thing like Dr. Ramsey usually does, he just pulls up a PowerPoint or, you know, you can have a PDF or a Word doc or whatever you're working off, it doesn't matter. If you're only picking up one thing, it's not really a big deal to use the screen share and then come back out of screen share. But if you want to switch from screen share over to inputting a video clip, how do you do that? Well, that's not quite so easy in Zoom because you got to go back to screen share and then you got to capture that video part of your computer and then go over there and then pick your video. You see what I'm saying? But when you're doing it this way, where you've got another computer and you're switching the computer in as a camera, then you just stay full screen. And then you bring that other computer and you can stage your videos or whatever documents you've got over there. You can stage that and get it ready while you're on another camera and then just switch over and pull it up, you know, or you can use the still function too to kind of block what you're doing on the other computer and then do it that way. But the functionality, you kind of override that screen share thing. And by the way, we can go, I guess we can go as long as we want tonight because I upgraded and it hasn't said anything about how many minutes you have. So I guess it just lets you go until you come to an end. But I do notice the front of the screen is different than the free screen, in other words. Okay.
Yeah, so, and you may have noticed that when you sign up for the pro version, you have to allow them to edit. Okay, that's part of the the agreement. You have to allow them to edit, which means
edit out objectionable language or objectionable video. Well, I understand that, and really they also allow you to report users, which is supposed to help you stop that kind of thing. In other words, tell them who the offender was, I guess. All right, let's go over that. I'll go to her. Let's cover her questions real quick, but I'll go to what we were talking about last week. This was really interesting. I don't know if y'all noticed this before, but if you go to Revelation 7, chapter 17, and go to the end, it's talking about these 10 kings who were given power with the beast for an hour. Well, we were talking back in chapter 13 at the very beginning, 13:2. It says the dragon has control or gives authority to the beast. That's what it says. In 13:2, it says the dragon. So it defines the dragon in chapter 12 as that old accuser, Satan, the devil, blah, blah, blah. Then in 13:2, it tells you that he's the one that gives authority to the beast, and we define beast as a military coalition government. But over here, when you get to the end of 17, it's talking about, mystery. It's talking about, it starts out about the great harlot and mystery Babylon. But when you get to the end, when you get to 17:17, it's talking about the 10 kings who were given power with the beast for an hour to go to war with the Lamb or Christ or his people, however you want to look at it. But read 17:17. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast until the words of God shall be fulfilled. You see, it was God that gave that put in the hearts of these 10 kings to align with Satan, Okay, because the beast is controlled by Satan, so they're aligning with Satan for an hour, because it says before that he'll right. Okay. And back in 14, it says, "These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. For he is Lord of lords, King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful." And before that, in 12, "And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet." So they're expecting to be in control over all the earth with Satan in control of them, you see. So they're joining with Satan, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. So there's why you get to the end, and you all this 10 kings is talked about as far back as chapter 12 or maybe 11, you see. But then when you get over here, you see that God said he's the one that gave them the idea and gave them the ability to do it. So what does that take?
Yeah. Yeah, well, Yahweh's in control.
There you go.
He's in control, right?
Well, a lot more than what
he's still
most
in control.
people think. More than what people think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
You got a comment, Pastor?
Yeah, well,
Everett?
No, I just have questions.
Okay.
When did that happen, or when is it going to happen?
Right. Yeah, you wanted to know.
And who are they?
Yeah.
Right.
See, that doesn't have any meaning to me unless I know those answers.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, well, I have that information in my document, Revelation Unfolded. I have to dig it up because it's hard for me to do it with splitting screens. Okay. Mm-hmm. But that era is in the era of the sixth beast, which is the combined kingdoms of pagan Rome, which experienced a deadly wound. So there was a period after pagan Rome died that the Christian world, the world of Israel, was not being persecuted. Okay, and that was the deadly wound, but the wound was healed by the papacy, and then the papacy started persecuting Christian Israel. Okay, so the 10 horns are the ones that formed the Holy Roman Empire with the papacy. I'll just have to think of some of them off the top of my head. The Alans and Sueves, the Burgundians, the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths.
I am familiar with the 10 kingdoms that were joined with Rome. I understand that. So I don't, you don't have to dig real hard for their names. I understand who you're talking about.
Yeah, right.
But, and so when did this proceed to the 6 kingdoms and the dragon? When is the war and so forth? I guess that's still future.
Right. Well, the last battle is, but since the Roman, the papacy, which retained the title Pontifex Maximus from the pagan empire, okay, they never gave that up. So that shows that the Roman Catholic Empire is just the continuation or the rebirth of the pagan empire. Okay.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that, and thank you for reminding me.
Okay, so those 10 horns, they stay with the papacy until almost the very end, when the 7th and 8th beasts take over the 6 beasts, Napoleon being the 7th beast, and that's what I covered in last Wednesday's Zoom meeting. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that.
No, I'm going to. I saved it. I will.
Yeah, it's pretty lengthy. So you have to block out some time to get all of that in there. Okay. But Napoleon was the 7th beast because he conquered the papacy, took all the papal states, and conquered almost all of Europe except for Britain and maybe Portugal. I don't know if he took over Portugal and parts of Russia. So he had a really huge empire, even though it only lasted 17 years. But he was succeeded by the Rothschilds, who actually financed Wellington's army. It wasn't the British government that financed Wellington's army. It was the Rothschilds. So that's the eighth beast, the empire of merchants, which will rule until the second coming. That's called the little season in Revelation chapter 20. Okay, so these 10 horns, they're still around. They probably increased in number, but the original 10 are still around. But they're of very little power today because the papacy was overcome by Napoleon in the era between 1800 and 1815. Okay.
So you would say that Trump trying to remove the Rothschilds is going to hurry up the coming of the Lord if he's successful.
I wish. I wish. I wish he were trying to remove the Rothschilds. I still think the Rothschilds are, playing with him. And,
my understanding is that Mr. Rothschild resigned banking and he was trying to negotiate a free state in France here about a month ago. So I don't know.
Really? Yeah.
And the IRS and the Fed have both been rolled into the U.S. Treasury, and they're going to be taken over by the U.S. government. At least that's his plan. So we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, they did the same thing in England about 30 years ago. That they supposedly nationalized the Bank of England.
Yeah.
But that didn't change anything for the Bank of England. They still do business the way they always have. It's just an illusion. It's a smoke screen they put in front of the people to make them think something good is happening. Okay.
Well, they're telling us that they were going to have gold-backed money. I don't know if that's true or not.
That's the promise. Promises, right? Promises, promises.
You got a lot of people looking at it, so you've got to be able to deal with it. I tell them I don't know. I tell people we're either going to have paradise or war, or one or the other. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, well, a lot of people say there's going to be 3.5 good years and then 3.5 bad years.
I don't know about that.
I think we've had the 3.5 good years.
Probably.
Right? Because this lockdown is obviously not good. Okay?
No, I'd have to agree that I think Trump was either finagled or he was a willing partner, one or the other. I'm not sure which.
Yeah, I think the Rothschilds have something on him. They always did. And I think the reason they ran him is because they're always playing the left-right paradigm, the Republican versus Democrat paradigm. Okay, and but they just wanted to feel out, the population to see how we're going to behave with this lockdown. But when Trump declared a state of emergency, he suspended the Constitution and put us under FEMA. That is a horrible. Horrible development.
No, I agree. I agree with that. Yeah.
So I'm not counting on Trump to bail us out. I think the whole Q phenomenon, where they is basically a ruse that they've been promoting to keep patriots behind Trump. But I don't think his actions with regard to coronavirus are right in step with the big boys. Okay, So if he was really against them ever, they finally pulled out whatever dirt they have on him. He may have had affairs with those American, what's it called? Miss America pageant beauty queens.
Yeah.
And they've been keeping the tapes on ice.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, he's married into the Jewish people, and so.
Big time.
Somebody did ask him what they were going to do about Israel and Palestine, and he said his comment was, "We're saving them to last." I don't know what that means. But.
Yeah, right. to last forever, right?
Yeah. Well, right. we can only hope not. That's all.
Yeah, right. No, well, obviously he's been, doing business with very, very rich Jews all his life.
Yeah.
And so it would be very difficult for me to believe that but even if he tried to rebel, even if he tried to get away, that would be I don't have to use the word, but let's say an agent from Mossad would be dispatched.
Yeah. Right,
okay? All right.
Yeah.
That's what would happen.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's where we're at, but what I can do, is Lily here, David?
No.
Because all I'm seeing, no? Oh, okay.
No. But I was going to go over her questions anyway.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So,
well, go ahead. Why don't we do that?
Well, okay. I wanted to ask you about what you were just talking about. What's the relationship between the 10 kings and the beast then, in your viewpoint?
Yeah. Well, it's between the 10 kings and the 6th beast. Okay.
Or all the beasts, however you want to look at it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's one overarching great whore, that rides on top of all the beasts. Okay. And that, in my interpretation, is the fractional reserve banking system that was created in Babylon. That was all of the economics experts who go back that far all point out to the fact that Babylon was where they began counterfeiting. Not again. It's the same group calling again. Okay. So anyway, they all insist that that's where promissory notes began, and that the bankers started counterfeiting promissory notes because they realized nobody was exchanging their promissory notes for actual gold on deposit. Okay, so this is where the counterfeiting of promissory notes began, and that today it's called inflation, fiat money inflation. That's where it began. So the 8th beast uses the same tactics to rule the entire world, and that's pretty obvious. Okay, the 8th beast being the Rothschilds. Okay, the 10 horns aren't much of a factor at the very end, from what I can see in Revelation. I don't know. What's your view, David? Do you see them? I think they've pretty much gone away.
Well, what I was trying to get at was it says the 10 kings are given power for an hour. So you have all 10 kings together at the same point in time who are all given power for an hour. So if they're all spread out through time, how do you do that?
Well, they were all together at the beginning of the Holy Roman Empire. Okay, they were all together then. Okay, so maybe their power can be rejuvenated for that 1 hour. What passage is that 1 hour in?
That was 17. Go ahead.
How long is an hour?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, if it was 1,000 years equal a day, then you could divide it out and say, well, that's however many.
250 years.
Is it 250 years?
Oh, okay.
I think it would be close to that.
It looks like there's a giant spider getting ready to attack you from behind.
Oh, that's his green screen.
It's a cat.
It's a cat. It's a cat, and she got in here. She's not supposed to be in here. But
because the green screen is doing funny things. It's like giving her tentacles above your
head.
It's
being moved.
You can't see it, right?
Yeah, it's moving the green screen, which is making it mess up.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
Yeah, so that was 1712, and it said, and the 10 horns, which you saw, are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. So it looks like you're talking about 10 kings in one place at one time who are all given an hour, because what they're going against is making war with the Lamb. So if they're all spread out over history, I don't see how these 10 kings can make war with the Lamb for an hour if we're talking about something historical spread out over time. This looks like something happening all at one time, which is the way the rest of Revelation reads, and is how Daniel chapter 7 reads. If you look at Daniel chapter 7, it reads as just like an overview of Revelation, all in one chapter.
Right. Well, this is where I have them listed. You have to understand, too, that the narrative in Revelation does jump around. It's not one continuous record of historical events.
Yes, but I explained that in my videos, and I've got a whole chart showing how the correlation between, like chapter 6, I said, is a preview of what you see later. Because if you read through chapter 6, all those things come up later in 16 and 17 and so on. So I wrote that up as a preview, and then starting with about, 8:6, then you have the events, which I described as what looks like nuclear war, which then progresses into chapter 9, which is a ground war, because over there you have the 200 million man army, or whatever the actual number is.
Right.
And then you have more of a description in chapter 11 of how the beast gets started. Because if you look at who's the first beast, well, when you're reading chapter 13, it starts out mine says a great red beast. Some of them just say a beast. I think in King James, and some of them say a red beast in other versions of King James. So it really just kind of depends on what you're looking at. But so I've got it all laid out, and it's just that you're right. It describes some things in one place, then it elucidates it a little bit more, and then it adds a little bit more over here. And then you don't really finish it out until you get to the end of chapter 19, and then it appears that Christ returns with all these people and the white horses, which are the ones that were dead in Christ, which are described back in chapter 6. So it's all there, but it's in pieces from different viewpoints. That's the way it appears to be.
Yeah, I've always felt the red horse was the Edomites, or the red dragon was the Edomites.
Okay. Well, it describes as Satan in chapter 12.
Yeah, well, the four horses of the apocalypse, they happen kind of early on in the narrative. I'm pretty much following what's his name from Massachusetts. His Howard B. Rand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he relates that to the early days of the Roman Empire when the Romans were persecuting the Christians. So those are the horses. Those four horses are different stages in the Roman Empire's evolution or development. Okay, the white horse being the generals, the Roman generals who always rode on a white horse, so that the troops could recognize that the general was in town or present. And then the last horse, which is the pale horse, is with the one that rules by death. And he equates that with the end of the Roman Empire, when it was such chaos and turmoil that it talked about death ruled, which means that 10 emperors in a row all succeeded each other by murder, by murdering the previous. Okay, so that's how he interprets that. That's the four horses. At least one horse, which is the good horse, the only good horse, is what, of course, is Yahshua, the second coming. Okay, at the very end with his mighty angels. So that's Christ. That's Jesus Christ at the end. Okay, so but the dragon is obviously Satan. There's no doubt about that. So let me go to my narrative here to see. And you might be right, David. There might be
all right, well, here's what I got. Let me turn my camera off so it doesn't block that.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. Does that block your view when I have my camera on? Does that block your view?
No, it's up in the corner. It just has a little block.
Well, but you see it. You see it. So that's what I was asking. So it blocks part of the document. So here, I don't know if you can read that, but you probably can.
That's better.
See that fine?
Okay.
I can make it bigger. Here, let me go a little bit bigger.
Let me maximize. There we go. I can see it. I can see it fine now.
Is that good? All right. So I've got this Revelation timeline, and we're just on the top. So I've got a top and a bottom. But I relate the seals, which are your horses, and I put them in a little bit different order, which may not be correct. But at any rate, 6:1, the first seal, the white horse goes out conquering and to conquer. But if you look at what it says in chapter 11, the two witnesses over here in chapter 11, prior to, and it might not be written on here, it probably isn't, but if you look at chapter 11, let me just back up and read you what it says, because if the two witnesses are two empires for Christ that are witnessing empires, which is kind of the way it reads it. As you read down through 11, it says they have power to shut heaven. So, well, here you go. Let's just back up, because it's really interesting if you just read the whole thing. Starts out with the measuring rod, measure the temple of God and the altar. but then the court leave out, for it's given into the Gentiles. And now we already taught that the Gentiles were actually other Israelites, and the holy city they'll tread underfoot 40 and 2 months. So it appears that you have this 42 months or a year and a half or 3 year period here, and then you also have another 3 year period over in chapter 13. But anyway, let's continue on. And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy. Who's giving power to who?
Well, Jesus giving power to the 2 witnesses. Yeah.
And so that means they got to be holy people of some kind. Lily's here.
Right.
Let's just go ahead and let her in, and let's just continue. Just hold on a minute, Lily. We're covering some of what she asked about this. So let's just let her in here, and we'll
Hi,
make
Lily.
sure she's muted. Let her go ahead and come in. She's just connecting. Not quite connected yet.
Yeah.
Here it looks like she's coming up now. She's not going to do video. She just wants to do audio.
Okay.
All right. It
Yeah.
looks
For
like,
some reason, it takes something.
we're using a lot of
bandwidth.
We're using a lot of bandwidth, so that might slow things down. Well, let's just give her a second because she's taking a long time to connect.
Yeah.
So I will say, okay, so here's Christ giving power to someone. So these would be godly people. He's not, or would it be? I mean, think about it. These are witnesses. Number one, why use the term witnesses unless they're witnesses for Christ? Here you got God giving them power. That's number two. And then it says there are 2 olive trees, 2 candlesticks standing before God. Now these people stand before God, even if you want to just say it's 2 people. So they're obviously holy people of some kind, right? And then we know where that goes. That goes over to Zechariah chapter 4. And over there, it says when you get to the end of Zechariah chapter 4, it tells them they're the 2 sons of oil. That's what it says. All right, here, let's see if Lily can hear us now. Can you hear us, Lily? Oops, let me see. All right. Hold on. She sounds like she's there, but your sound is real low.
Yeah. Yeah, it's real low. Oops. Looks like
Can you up your sound a little bit? Oh, she left. All right.
Yeah, we lost her.
All right, so she went out.
Okay.
At any rate, so these are given power with God. They have power to shut heaven. Now, the people kind of wonder, well, we don't have power to do that. But yeah, we do. We got power. It's talking about rain, you see. Power to shut heaven that it doesn't rain.
Right.
Okay, well, we have that power. It's called the harp.
Yeah.
We sell that technology to other countries. The UAE bought that technology from us, and they make rain in the desert in the UAE and Dubai and places like that using the technology they bought from us because we sell the technology. Everybody's heard of cloud seeding, but the harp is a whole different thing. It's a electronic device, at any rate, atmospheric heater, but it does make rain, and you can also use it to stop rain. They're using it in America right now. I mean, just come on. It's nothing that we don't have. So it rained not in the days of their prophecy. So apparently during this period, it's not going to be raining. All right. So that's something to think about. Have power over waters to turn them to blood. Well, when does water turn to blood? Well, when you have war, and that refers back to chapter 8 and chapter 9, which you would have just read. Okay. And smite the earth with plagues. The plagues and smiting the earth with plagues is in chapter 9. It's talking about war over there. As often as they will. Well, who do you know that can go around and make war as often as they want to right now? Think about that. I think America is doing a lot of that. And when they'll finish their testimony, the beast, here she is. She's coming back. So she probably did something. I'll let her back in. At any rate, and they'll finish the beast. When they have finished, the beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit, which is chapter 9, shall make war against them. You don't make war against 2 people. See, you make war against 2 empires. It's talking about in the context of beast, the context of beast is empires. You're not making war with 2 people. So the 2 witnesses, one way of looking at it is these 2 empires that also teach the message of Christ, because when you go to chapter 7, it gives you this the list of Israelites, and when you go to chapter 14, it tells you that they follow God's law and teach the message of Christ, and that's also duplicated in chapter 12, 17. These people defined in chapter 12, the crown of 12 stars, follow God's law and teach the message of Christ. So we're talking about empires of people who follow God's law, teach the message of Christ. That's the context.
Okay.
If you look at the overall.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, all right, let's let Lily in here real quick.
But the symbols of the two witnesses. Oh, okay.
She's on. You hear us, Lily?
Hello? Lily, are you there?
She's unmuted.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I thought you were going to mute me.
Yeah, we are having a meeting.
Oh.
I'm on my phone.
Yeah, just to be sure you're here. Yeah. Yeah, we just want to hear you to make sure you're there. Okay. Hi, Lily. Good to hear from you again.
Well,
hi. Good to see you.
That was Eli, and I got Pastor Ramsey here too, and we were actually talking about these beasts and the two witnesses, which is exactly what you asked about. So we're actually covering the material that you had asked earlier. So why don't you just listen in for a minute? I'll go ahead and mute you, and then we'll bring you back on.
Okay.
All right, she's muted. All right, so I was explaining the two witnesses appear to be empires if you connect the dots, and if you continue on, yes, they can stop rain. However, when they'll finish their testimony, the beast says, "Send to make war against them and shall overcome them and kill them." Now, everybody says, well, this is two people, but back in Zechariah 4, it's not two people, because these sons of oil is a prophecy, in my opinion. Okay, that's what I'm saying. This is the way I'm looking at it. It's this prophecy, and the prophecy comes from the power with God that Jacob passed to Ephraim and Manasseh when he put them in charge over the 12 tribes. Now, when did that prophecy come about, you see? Because he promises himself, when you read the prophecy in 49:24 of Genesis, you can see he gives a prophecy to Jacob or Joseph, and he reiterates Ephraim and Manasseh, and that's where he says that it's the stone. He talks about the stone, but that's Christ the stone, or Christ the rock, who is given to Ephraim and Manasseh. Right. So this prophecy is given over them as power with God, which Jacob had when his name was changed to Israel. That's what it meant, ruling with God, power with God. And that's exactly how chapter 11 reads when you're reading it. Go ahead, if anybody has a comment.
Sure. Well, the two lampstands are the Old Testament and New Testament, in my opinion.
I agree.
And the two witnesses, because the symbolism is still, the house of Israel and the house of Judah is, I see the two witnesses as those two houses, because they're the ones who bring the word with them. So, I've thought about what you're saying as well, that it could be Ephraim and Manasseh. The only question is when would the rule of Ephraim and Manasseh start? Could be the Anglo-Saxons, right, in Europe, and then wandering over to Great Britain, because America and Britain are basically Anglo-Saxon countries, okay?
All right, well, keep that thought for a minute, Eli, because you and Pastor Ramsey know what you're talking about better than I do. But let me continue just a little bit more and connect the dots all the way through chapter 12 to chapter 13, and I'll show you how this connects real quick, because you probably never haven't seen some of this. Now, we know after that, these two witnesses, and then we can, let's just continue what it said, because you end the second woe here. But at any rate, it said, after 3 days and a half, the Spirit entered them. They stood up on their feet. A great fear fell upon them which saw them. So if these were Christian people and they stood up on their feet, Christian people wouldn't have a great fear, but people who were not Christian would have a great fear. Right. And they heard a great voice from heaven saying, "Come up hither." So here's your rapture, where these people that were just killed are brought up to heaven. I contend that that's the first thing that people are going to see in the end time, that they're going to recognize as, oh, this connects to Revelation chapter 11, 12 right there. That you're going to see it, and that's these people who were just killed in this war. Now let me continue to show you it's people and not just two guys. The same hour there's an earthquake, so you're going to see that tenth part of and then the earthquake were slain 7,000. So you'll see that, and the remnant were affrighted and gave glory to the God of heaven. Non-Christian people are not called the remnant, right?
That's right. Of course not.
And they don't give glory to God of heaven about these people who were just taken up into the sky. Now let's continue. That's the second woe. Now you get to the third. Seventh angel.
By the way, not to interrupt, I'm getting a message here. David Ewing's network bandwidth is low. It's telling me that your bandwidth is low. Okay.
Well, it might be, but it's been showing that off and on. But I'm recording on my end, so hopefully it will continue to record and it'll be fine. Let's just continue.
Okay.
Now, in verse 15, the seventh angel sounded. There were great voices saying, "The kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord." Really?
Mm-hmm.
You see? Yeah. So we're talking about kingdoms. Ultimately. So kings, kingdoms, not two people. We're talking right there about kingdoms and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. Although it doesn't actually take place at this moment, as you were saying earlier. It actually takes place over there in 1917, I think, where Christ returns on the white horse. That's where it actually takes place. There and to the end of chapter 19, where he does away with the beast and the false prophet. That's when he takes over control. Not that he's not in control. I'm just saying. That's where you see it happen. And the nations were angry. And thy wrath has come, and the time of the dead that they shall be judged. So here, nations are being judged. Thou shalt give reward to thy servants, the prophets, and to the saints, and to them that fear thy name. So we're talking about multiple people, not just two people. Small and great shall destroy them which destroyeth the earth. So that's who he's against. People who are destroying the earth. They're not just destroying two people. Understand? Mm-hmm. Let's continue. Right. Temple of God was open in heaven. They were seen his temple, the ark. There were lightnings, voices, thunder, and earthquake. So here's another earthquake and great hail. Now, when you get to chapter 12, appeared a great woman, a woman clothed in the sun, moon under her feet, under her head a crown of 12 stars. That's the symbology of Joseph's second dream. Now, he had two visions, which were dreams, which were actually prophecies. So that's, if you remember, that was, 37:9 in Genesis of the second one. And then Jacob said, "Would me and your mother bow to you?" See, he was putting him in the place of the son and his mother, Rachel, which was dead, had already been dead for 10 years, as the moon, and then the 12 stars as his brothers. So there's your symbology. And who
including Levi.
But where would that prophecy come from? That's obviously a prophecy. Where would that prophecy actually come from? Well, it links to that vision, but the prophecy actually comes earlier from the Abrahamic covenant. I think I'd have to go back and look. I think that's right around the beginning or the ending of Genesis chapter 17, where Sarah is also given a prophecy that mirrors what Abraham's prophecy, that kings and nobles and queens would all come from her, you see. So what that prophecy is about back there is about Abraham's offspring in the future, which he'd already told him in 15:13 of Genesis. He'd already given a prophecy. He was going to bring them out of Egypt. See, so he's talking about bringing all 12 tribes, so the same context for her. So that's why this prophecy applies to Sarah, and a lot of people say Mary, but Mary didn't have a prophecy like this. This is Abraham and Sarah we're talking about here. They're the progenitors of the 12 tribes because that prophecy goes back to Genesis chapter 15 and back to 12. I mean, it originates in Genesis chapter 12. Now, let's look at this. If you continue on down, so this is what it's doing is it's making this, the reason I came up, and this will answer Pastor's question, the reason I came up with this date that I thought this September 13, 2017 date that was a video done by Scotty Clark and I've got links to the video so you can find it. But at any rate, he did this video saying that, this alignment, this is related to the Mazareth. not astrology, but astronomy. So he's saying this is an idea of what we're going to see in the sky, which relates to the Mazareth, which is in Job, and that comes from Job. So he goes through this whole
the Adamic zodiac. Yeah.
But astronomy, not astrology. Okay. So he says this is alignment. You can go find it in this program that NASA made, which was Stellarium, and he did this whole thing and said it only aligns exactly like it says here in Revelation 12. That exact alignment only happens once every 7,000 years, and it's coming up on September 23rd, 2017. And then the second part about the dragon, he says that's also an alignment because that's real close to the woman, which is Virgo in the sky. They're side by side. That's also alignment, and that was December 12th, or I think 12th, 2017, and that those alignments both happened exactly like he said. Now, he took a little liberty with adding planets in as stars, but he said they do that, or they actually did that. They did count planets when you could see them, when they were visible. They were so large you could see them. They count them as stars. So that's exactly what happened. So that answers where I got that idea that might be the beginning of Jacob's trouble and the 7 year, if it's indeed 7 years, as a lot of people teach. That's how I teach that. However, let's continue. Let me show you something over here. Now, I told you 12:17. Everybody knows that. So the children, again, in 12:17, referring back to the crown, the children, the dragon was wroth with the woman, so of course we know what it says in 12, and went to make war with the remnant. Okay, so he's not making war with two people. He's making war with a remnant of the seed of these chosen Israel people, God's covenant people, in other words. Not two people, all right? Now let's show you the crowning glory down here. Let's scroll on down. Which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. There's only one group of people who are chosen by God, God's covenant people, who do that. And there's only two nations that could be under Ephraim and Manasseh. That would be the United States and the UK, as it was originally founded by Christian people. But here's the clincher. Go to 13. Now scroll down. When you get to 7, it says, and it was given unto him, this is the dragon in control of the first beast. It was given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given to him over all kindreds, tongues, and nations. Now, everybody says, oh, kindreds. Well, kindreds is not used except in the Bible, except as applying to God's covenant people. However, if you back up in Revelation, that's all the way back to 1, 6, and 7. Back there, you have these people who are kings and priests. That's the Melchizedek priesthood, all the way back from Genesis chapter 14, okay, who are in Exodus 19:5. That's the first thing he told them when they came out of Egypt, that he was going to make them a holy nation of kings and priests, a royal priesthood. And that royal priesthood is repeated through the Bible about 6 times. It's on my chart, but I'm not on that one right now. And then it's repeated in Revelation 5:9. This exact language, kindreds, nations, tongues, who are obviously the ones in 5:9 of Revelation, are obviously these people from 1, 6, and 7 of Revelation. So I've got a whole chart connecting the dots because those connect all the way up to here. And where were these people just destroyed? Well, in 13:5, what does it say? I was given to them a mouth speaking great things, and blasphemies, powers are given to him to continue for 42 months. So these people here in verse 7 refer back to 11:7, these two witnesses, which are nations of kindreds, tongues, and nations, which follow God's law and have the testimony of Christ, from 12:17, who are these woman with the crown of 12 stars from 12:1, who are these people in chapter 11. It doesn't change context. It doesn't change context from Revelation 1, 6, and 7 to 5, 9 to chapter 7, where it defines them as Israel people, to chapter 14, which it defines them again in chapter 14 as the conquerors, who are these Israel people. Comments?
Well, that's a lot to absorb, David. That's a lot to absorb.
Well, the only question I had was, you mentioned that the two witnesses would be killed, and then later on you said that those dead people were raised up and gone.
No, some of them are killed, not all of them, because it said there was a remnant. Remember, the remnant gave glory to God. So some are killed. They're warriors. They're people in war. So those would be your soldiers, you see, who are at war. Yeah, would be your military. And how would you kill all the military in the United States at one time? Well, I can tell you how they do it. I've repeated this multiple times. You just pull their credit card. You don't necessarily have to kill them all, but when you pull their credit card, they're in these big ships floating around in the sea. And how do they buy fuel? How do they rearm? How do they do anything if they don't have their credit card? Because everything America does is on a credit card. They're borrowing money from the Rothschild Bank. So when the Rothschild Bank wants to destroy them, it just pulls their credit card. They have no money to restock, and they're just dead in the water. Understand?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's all true. But relating it to these passages in Revelation, isn't that all that clear?
No, but I've got, Eli, look, if you watch my videos, I've got hours and hours where I've gone through those in great detail. I just did a very, very quick little summary of what I've got on my charts, and I've got this timeline chart, so we could spend hours just on this.
Right, yeah. Well, there's several beasts, however, that are given power to make war on the saints. Okay, the Catholic Church did that. The Jews that have done that are doing it.
Now hold on. Now, the Catholic Church does not fit the definition of a beast, because if you look at if you do a topical on this beast, you'll see it cannot apply to a simple church. A church is part of the whole. In other words, churches are part of empires, but they're not the ones calling the shots. They're just advisors, spiritual advisors, and they're actually under control. Think about it. How are the churches in America under control of the government? Well, Pastor Ramsey can tell you all about that.
You're not using a like example. The Roman Catholic Church was a powerful multi-nation manager. It put kings in, took them out. It did everything. For many years, they were over many countries. So I would say, for at least in the beginning, it could have been a beast. I don't know about today. I don't know if it has the same power today.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. We're talking about today. I'm talking about all these events here in Revelation is happening in this period, 7-year period of Jacob's trouble. And at this point in time, the Roman Catholic Church does not qualify as a beast because it has to have an army.
No, not today.
No, not today. And how many years has it been since they were in that position? Go ahead, Eli, if you know.
They lost their army in 1805 to Napoleon. They've never had, the Vatican has never had an army since.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's good for the end times, but, how do we reckon the 40 and 2 months in the 1,260 years, and days, not years. The only thing I can connect those two numbers to, 40 and 2 months and 1,260 days, is it harkens back, at least for me, to the 2,520 years of the woman wandering in the wilderness. And it's basically talking about periods in our history that last 1,260 years, okay? So now there could be a dual fulfillment where it's talking about literal 40 and 2 months and not 1,260 years, but I don't know anybody who's really delved into the interpretation to sort all that out. But from what you're saying, yeah, there could be a dual prophecy that all these end times events fit into. Okay, and certainly the Catholic Church is not a major power today. They're third
all right,
rate.
well, let's bring
fifth
Lily
rate
on
power.
because
Yeah.
Lily asked about this specifically, and let's bring her on. And
guys,
we'll,
I'm gonna have to leave you. So
okay.
I appreciate it. I'll watch the rest of it on after you put it up. Thank you.
Okay, Pastor. Thank you.
Thanks, Pastor.
Yep. Okay.
All right, Lily, can you hear us now? Lily.
Yeah, can you hear me? I don't.
Yeah,
have,
that sounds okay. You got a little reverberation, so you probably got a little feedback, probably. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I can hear you. Yeah. So Lily, you had a specific question.
Okay. Well, my question was I did not see how the second beast could be the two witnesses, because the second beast causes the whole world to worship the dragon. So to me, I couldn't see how the two witnesses would,
Yeah.
prophesy.
Which chapter? Which chapter? Are you
to worship the dragon.
Which chapter are you
That
talking
is
about?
in 11.
Oh, okay.
Revelation 11.
Now you're actually talking about 13.
Or, well, I take that back.
Okay, 13.
Yeah, where he sees the second beast rise up out of the sea.
That's 13:12, probably, Eli. I think it's around 13:12.
Okay. Okay.
All right, on 11. Now, 11 is very important. This is what I told her. Let me speak for just a second, Lily. I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and had two horns like a lamb. Now, I said these are the two witnesses back here who were conquered by the dragon. Okay, that's 13:11. And he exercises all power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound is healed. Now, my answer to her is the fact that these two witnesses, these two empires, were just conquered back here in 11:7. So now they're under control. I identified them, and you missed part of that, Lily, but I identified them through multiple verses all the way through Scripture as being a group of people, nations and tongues, in 13:7. And it identified them in chapter 12 as being this crown, which would be, so we're talking about the prophecy of Abraham and Sarah, going back, to when he brought them out of Egypt. We covered all that. So that specifically identifies them as the 12 tribes. In 12:17, they're a group of people, in other words, her children, who worship Christ and teach the Bible. In other words, follow God's law and teach the Bible is the concept. And in 14:12, same thing. They worship Christ, teach the Bible, and follow God's law. So that all those connections I just made to show they're a group of people, not just two men or two people of some kind. So we went through all that. They're taken over, and I explained how they could be conquered in war. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Lily.
All right.
Well, and nobody's disagreeing with that. We all agree that it's not two people, but it's like Eli said, the house of Judah and Israel, or perhaps Ephraim and Manasseh. But my issue is I don't see how this second beast that looked like a lamb, spake like a dragon, two witnesses.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not saying those are the two witnesses. This is the dragon.
One world too.
Yeah, this is a dragon, Lily. I didn't say it that. I'm not trying to say it that way. What I'm saying it in 13, you have the first beast. You have the dragon in control of the beast, and that beast just took over these other empires here in 13:1. But he also took over the two empires from 11:7. That's where he conquered them in 11:7, which is what 13:7 is referring back to. So now he has all these empires, And again, in 13:11, it identifies those two witnesses as two empires who worship the Lamb, but now they're under control of the dragon, and now they become the second beast. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Well, okay. Well, to me, the critical thing is which beast is it that has the deadly wound that was healed? Okay, and that's covered in Revelation 13:3. The only one of the seven beasts, because the eighth beast isn't being talked about yet, and the beasts that I deal with are Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, the Medes and Persians, the Greeks, and then there's the Roman Empire, which is number 6. The Roman Empire was divided into two empires, whose seat was Rome, but they were two entirely different empires. The first one was pagan Rome, and the second was papal Rome, and there was a long period of peace between those two empires, which is considered as one beast by the narrative here. That's the way I read it. Okay, so and then we have this constant reiteration of the years 1260 or 42 months. The only thing I can relate that to is the 7 times prophecy, 2,520 years. So I think here in Revelation 13, it's a reiteration of the Israelites under this power that the pagan Roman Empire, it culminated in the pagan Empire of Rome. And then the next chapter begins with the Vatican. So if you divide up the 2,520 years that Israel wandered in the wilderness, the woman in the wilderness, Revelation chapter 12, then there's that dividing line. So one takes us to whatever it is, 615 AD, I think it was. That was a period of peace, and there was no more pagan Roman Empire. And then right after that, the Holy Roman Empire starts up, and that takes us to 1776. Okay, that's your 2,520 years. So I see that with these two beasts that are being talked about here in Revelation 13 are not part of those seven, the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. These are two new entities that are being introduced here. That's how I see this. And so you're saying, well, so far, Lily, are you getting what I'm saying up to this point?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So because those 7 beasts, those 7 beasts of the original vision are very easily identified, except for the last 2, which Bertrand Comparet identified as Napoleon being number 7, and which is the international banking system, the House of Rothschild being number 8. Okay. So, but these 2 beasts are not part of those 7. Okay, there these two beasts. Okay, well here. All right, well let me read verse 13:3. And I saw one of his heads. See, hold on. Let me go back. See where. Okay. And I stood upon. Let me read 13:1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy. Okay, so this, so it's still a reference to that original 7 beast system. And then verse 2, and that the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him power. Okay, so the leopard, the bear, and the lion are all symbols going back to Daniel, which again ties these 7 beasts back to the prophecies of Daniel, Daniel chapters 2 and 4. Okay, so then the dragon is obviously Satan. Okay, the dragon gives this beast power. So let's see, let's keep going. And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to the death, and his deadly wound was healed. So he's talking about the Revelation 13:2 is talking about the first 3 beasts of Daniel chapter 2, which were Babylon, Medes and Persians, and the Greeks. And then the fourth one is Rome, and it's telling us again that the fourth one had its deadly wound healed. So to me, this is confirmation that this fourth beast, this new beast, it's not calling it the fourth beast of Daniel. This new beast being talked about is, in fact, Rome again. Okay, that makes sense to you, Lily?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I learned a lot of the Revelation from Arnold Murray, and he taught that first beast of Revelation 13 was a world political system. So I'm trying to see it too from that standpoint, because in Daniel, remember, it talked about the fourth beast was diverse.
Right.
And what do we have today? But diversity is, diversity is just rampant.
Well, I mean, there could be
right now. So to me, it kind of represents.
There certainly could be dual fulfillments
just
along those lines, but the key phrase to me is the beast that had its deadly wound healed. And the only one that I can come up with that even remotely qualifies that is Rome. Okay. And that was, because Rome was divided into pagan and papal entities, which are both ruled a very, very long time. Okay. So, you could project it into the end times, but
all right. Well, let me give you the end time version of that, Eli.
Okay. All right.
Hold on just a sec. Let me give you the end time version. Okay. So the end time version of that is, let me ask you a question. If you start Revelation chapter 13 here, and you've got 3 beasts, I'm contending that's actually 4 beasts there in the first verse, because the lion is actually 2 from Daniel chapter 7. Be that as it may, how come, well, first of all, it doesn't say the first beast, it just says a beast. How come there are three beasts, if you want to say, in control of the dragon right there at the beginning? There's 3 beasts, then the dragon's in control of all those beasts, and then when you get over to 13, or what was it, 12, you're only talking about the second beast. Well, you just conquered 3 beasts, so doesn't that align with what Daniel chapter 7 says? Because Daniel chapter 7 starts out with 4 beasts, and it doesn't talk about the first beast, it talks about the fourth. So the way I explain that is, well, okay, it had to be a first beast. When a first beast killed and took over another empire, it became the second. When it took over another, it became the third. When it took over another, it became the fourth. So there you've got 4 beasts right there at Daniel chapter 7, which it then tells you are empires. So these are military empires, because you don't count as a beast to go out and kill some little nation off that doesn't have an army. We're talking about nations who have armies.
Right.
All right. So that's what makes it a military conquering empire. So how do you explain it? Now, the first beast and the second beast. All right. So how do you explain that? With everything you just read, how do you explain it? The second beast, when you go up there to the second beast, as we just mentioned, it mentions that it just took control of this Lamb kingdom. Okay, which I said was the 2 witnesses. So back here, if you read through the first of 13, you have this head who was killed, and then it came back to life, if you want to say it that way. Well, okay, so who would be the first beast in your viewpoint if you were looking at this from an end time and connecting the dots and saying all these empires were together at the same time? Who would be the first beast? Who was the first beast mentioned in Revelation? Who was the first beast mentioned in Revelation?
You mean Revelation chapter 1?
In Revelation period, who's the first beast mentioned? You see?
It's Assyria, because the beast system doesn't appear without all 7. It talks about the 7 beasts with the 10 horns. Okay, so the first one would be Assyria.
How how do you get Assyria out of these two empires that worship Christ and full of Christian people? Who are the two empires that worship Christ?
Not in Revelation 13. The first two beasts don't worship Christ.
Yeah, but
right?
That's what it describes here. So it describes these two witnesses as being nations and tongues, their kindreds, and it described them in full detail. People that worship Christ, which is why it calls them witnesses.
Yeah.
However, the first beast described in Revelation is actually the two witnesses. That if you go back and read Revelation, that's the first beast that's actually described. Until you get to this Revelation 11:7, you see, that's where the dragon or the beast comes in and conquers these two empires which worship Christ, which reflects what it says in 13:11. See, there were lamb kingdoms, but now they're conquered by the dragon, which is why now you have the second beast, and now you have this head was the headquarter. The head was the headquarter of these first beasts, which is the two witnesses. And who is the headquarter of the two witnesses? It would be Washington. For us, it'd be Washington, D.C. Of course, it'd be your military, so it wouldn't necessarily be Washington, D.C. But so what I'm saying is that's continuity of government. When your headquarter is destroyed, you simply bring up your continuity of government center, and then it all goes over to that, which is now your new headquarter, which is how your head is healed. Go ahead.
Yeah, I still see the beast that had a deadly wound. I still think that it's talking about the era of the second phase of Rome, which is the papacy, because I don't see any end time. Which beast has a deadly wound healed? I don't see any other candidate for that in history.
The one that was just conquered. In other words, the one that was just conquered here in Revelation is from 11:7. It was conquered back in 11:7. There's two witnesses.
Well, which one is that? I mean,
that's the first beast. See, that's the first beast that's laid out here in Revelation is the two witnesses. That's the first beast. Now, if you're looking at it as an end time perspective, if you're looking at it from your perspective, then wouldn't the Roman papacy have to come back to life and have an army and be able to go out and conquer the world? Wouldn't that be how you would have to look at it?
No, because I'm not projecting that into the future. That's ancient history. So, I'm not expecting Rome to be revived. The Seventh-day Adventists are, right? But no, again, it's talking about the beast whose deadly wound was healed, and there's no. It has to be one of the seven. It has to be one of the seven, and it can't be Judah and Israel. It can't be the two witnesses who are Judah and Israel, because it has to be one of the seven, and those seven are those consecutive beasts, which I just enumerated, starting with Assyria, ending with six beasts being Rome, the head is deadly wound healed, then Napoleon, and then the House of Rothschild. Okay, so I still think Revelation 13 is talking about Rome. It's the transition of the two phases of the Roman Empire. Okay.
Well, it can only be that if it's not being an end time connotation. And the way it's laid out, it appears to all happen in 7 years, which is what a lot of people teach. And the way it talks about it in chapter 7 of Daniel, it appears all these empires are in other words, how could you have four empires, one conquering another in Daniel chapter 7 if they didn't all exist at the same time? Now you'd have to take Daniel chapter 7 and you have to spread it out over thousands of years.
Well, that's the way it's described. They're consecutive empires. They're not.
No, they're not described as
at the same time.
No, they are talked about in Daniel chapter 7 as being in existence at the same time, because otherwise the first beast could not be the fourth beast. The first beast could not become the fourth beast if it wasn't conquering beasts that all existed at the same time.
Okay. All right. Well, most of the interpreters I've read the four beasts down to two, and the later beasts are still the same empires. They're second descriptions of the same four empires: Babylon, Medes and Persians, Greeks, and the Romans. That's the way, I've had it explained to me by others.
But Daniel chapter 7 says the lion was flown in on the wings of an eagle and stood up as a man, which would make sense if it was the two witnesses, because that's a prophecy from back in Exodus, where he brought them out of Egypt on two wings of an eagle. So he brought all 12 tribes out, two wings of an eagle. Well, when it stood up like a man, that means it's running war under its own power, and it's threw off the power of God, in other words.
Right. Well, that would be Christianity, and the last empire, which no one can make war against and win. Okay, and but we're that is, I think you could say that's the development of Christianity in the West under the House of Israel and House of Judah, which are still separate because the House of Judah has the scepter, and the House of Israel is led by Ephraim and Manasseh, which is the birthright. So, and then who is Jesus? He is us. He's our king, right? I mean, so I can see that. I can see that. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I've heard all your videos, and I understand how you're teaching it. The reason I say and all this is happening within 7 years is because when you go back to chapter 8 and 9 of Revelation, it appears to be nuclear war. And I said, if this is a nuclear war, which is what Zechariah 5 describes, then you don't have nuclear war spread out over years or long periods of time. It all would happen within the 3.5 year period or the 7 year period for the whole thing. So that would make perfect sense. And it makes perfect sense when you compare it with other things it says in Revelation. Unfortunately, I shot 200 hours of video, so that would be the prerequisite for our speech on that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I don't know if you can condense, you can project Revelation 9, 8, and 9 into 7 years only. And it's not necessarily nuclear war. It's because there's been really horrible warfare throughout history. Okay. So, I mean, and then trying to condense all that into 7 years, because I haven't seen your entire presentation, and it's a lot longer than mine, right? So I haven't had time to look at all that. So I would say the nuclear war doesn't happen until after or right around the time when the eighth beast is destroyed. The House of Rothschild and the false prophet. Okay, those two, the last beast, the eighth beast, and the false prophet are the last to be destroyed just before Satan himself. And so I don't see us having nuclear war until that period in time. Okay.
All right, and I want to put one more thing out for Lily, which we talked about before, and I told her I was going to get into on this because it's on my chart right here on Revelation 9:20. Okay. We were talking about the church or Rome or whoever being called a beast, and what I was going to point out here, when you get to Revelation chapter 20, this judgment is on 4 groups of people who it says commit murder, sorcery, fornication, and theft. And if you read a couple more verses, they're worshiping these frogs, these 3 frogs, which are demons. So this is the 4 things, or 5, if you want to add that one, which comprise a military beast. In other words, a beast is committing murder through various means, not just killing its own people, through war. In other words, that's your military-industrial complex who are committing murder because they're going out attacking other countries, which is what chapter 11 of Revelation said. That's how it defined the 2 witnesses. Then the sorcery part is the pharmakia, which is getting everybody to get involved in sorcery. So in other words, when they anything to do with putting shots in people's arms without their consent, that would be considered sorcery. Your fornication actually has, fornication actually has three connotations, which is right here on the right side. sexual, spiritual, and for gain. So I get into that. And then the theft is your banking. Theft through banking is not your neighbor stealing your car or whatever, your motorcycle, and that kind of thing. These all apply. Yes, exactly. These all apply to the beast, and then this is reiterated 4 times in Revelation. 18, it's actually 18:23, 21:8, and 22:15, where again mentions sorceries. But in 18:23 it says all nations are deceived by sorcery, and they're guilty of the blood of the prophets, the blood of the saints, and of all slain. See, this is not talking about, 2 simple people. In other words, we're talking about nations. So the 2 witnesses are nations.
And 2 empires.
Exactly. They're empires, nations, and that's what makes them beasts. But when they kill people and guilty of murder, sorcery, fornication, and theft, that's what makes them a beast. So there's your definition right there. Go ahead, Lily, if you have something to say. Let Lily.
Well, I wanted to ask you something, and maybe a little bit off topic or might tie right in. How do you take into consideration, I don't have the verse right in front of me because I'm on my cell phone here, the part about where the time is shortened to 5 months? You've been talking about 7 years, and you've been talking about 42 months, but what about the 5 months for the sake of the elect? How would that factor in? Any ideas?
5 months. Do you know which verse you're talking about?
Are you talking about those days shall be shortened? That verse?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that doesn't limit it. That doesn't limit it to 5. Yeah, that doesn't limit it to 5 months, as I recall. It does. It's an unspecified amount of time.
Maybe I'm thinking the locust season, May to September.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's that. Yeah. Yeah. Howard B. Rand explains that they had to raid Europe in the summer months because they would they would slash and burn. They would raid the farms and get their food, and then go to the next farm, village, town, and then they would get their food on the run. They could only do that in the summertime. So that's your 5-month period.
There is a 5-month period Eli mentioned here in chapter 9. It's 9:5, but he's talking about this is where the 5th angel lets Polly or Abaddon out of the pit. And then it talks about these locusts, and then it says, give it to them that they should not kill them, but they should be tormented 5 months. Is that what you were referring to?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Lily?
Lily, is that the... I don't know any other 5-month period. Go ahead. Yeah.
Right, and I'm thinking that it ties into the other verse where it talks about, for the sake of the elect, the time will be shortened.
Yeah.
And
I don't recall that stipulating a 5-month.
Shortened is to 5 months.
Yeah, I don't recall that stipulating a 5-month period. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, the only 5-month period I know of is this one in 9. And I've already described these locusts as helicopters, and I've already gone into a long diatribe on that. While they would be either, they could be some kind of a remote control machine. They don't have to be a helicopter, but they're described as helicopters, but they launch, it looks like they're launching gas, not firing bullets, which is unique to, maybe a remote control machine of some
rockets.
kind.
Rockets. Yeah.
They are doing rockets, but then they're spraying gas or something like that.
Okay.
All right. So y'all about done for the day?
Yeah, I would say so. But Lily, it occurred to me when you talked about the diverse kingdom. That goes back into Daniel, correct? Yeah. Well, that would be again Rome, because Rome was diverse from the other 3 previous ones because it was a republic. Okay. The 3 previous ones started out as monarchies and stayed monarchies, but Rome started out as a republic and became a monarchy. That's why Rome was diverse from the previous 3. Okay.
And my explanation of the diverse kingdom then would be
Okay. Well,
Revelation 13:1, right at the beginning, where you have all these beasts who are all conquered by this other beast, which would be the first beast. So you have all these diverse people who have all conquered and are all being ruled under Satan. That would be the diverse people. Go ahead, Lily.
yeah, just like in closing, one of the things that is, I guess, really heavy on my mind is that the second beast of Revelation 13 appears to be like a one world church. And I've been seeing a lot about the Noahide Day.
Right.
Like, I guess H.W. introduced that law, the Noahide law, and it's Masonic. And it's, I don't know if you've been looking at any of the videos about the duality, how they worship the Baphomet, which is an androgyne, and that this is like a one world religion that's going to come into being.
Yeah.
That it's in the process and the throes of being established. And
right.
in which case they're going to bring back the guillotine and behead those who
right.
worship idols, which means even the worship of Christ.
Amen.
And
Yeah.
I just see that kind of being factored in as a part of that that second beast.
Yeah. Well, I see that part of the as
Establishment
part
of
of the,
one world.
right. I see it as part of the false prophet, because there were every how should I put this, religious beast throughout history, um, and even to some extent Protestantism had its period of imperialism, where it tried to conquer other religions and other people. But the two main culprits there have always been Judaism and Catholicism, right? They're the two main culprits there. Okay.
Right.
All right. So maybe that would fit. Maybe that would fit the scenario you're painting. I don't see that the house of Israel and the house of Judah are dwelling on the earth to conquering. Although the British Empire had its fair share of that, there's no doubt about that, right? And the American Empire has had its fair share of that too. So that may be a really good interpretation of Revelation. But it speaks of these two beasts, which could be diverse from the seven beasts. But it says here, they're part of the beast system that had seven heads. And now wait a minute. That's the way it starts out in Revelation 13:1. So let me think about the Revelation 13 in terms of what you and Lily are saying here, and see if I can meld these two interpretations, because I really tend to follow Rand and how he analyzes this, that Revelation chapter 9 occurred as yeah. Go ahead.
I just see that they're trying to say, everybody comes from Noah. We all descend from Noah.
Oh, right. Yeah, New World
and
religion.
They're trying to impose a Noahide law on everybody.
Right. Yeah, that's Jewish.
Of course,
totally
we
Jewish.
know that Noah's descendants, exactly, and yet they're trying to bring that about, impose this religion on everybody, and turn us all into androgynes.
Right. Right.
I mean, I don't know if you know it, but there's such a strong deception. I mean, almost every female on television is an androgyne.
Yeah. Well, the
You think it's a
transgenderism.
woman, but it's not.
Transgenderism is pushed hard, really hard. Yeah, that's what they're trying to do. No doubt. No, absolutely no doubt.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. All right. So,
yeah.
So let me think about Revelation 13 and how they might blend between David's interpretation and Howard Rand's interpretation. There might be a point of contact here. It's interesting. You got to read the language really carefully.
Yeah,
Let me address her question, Eli.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
13 is talking. First of all, it was talking about a beast who is forcing people to take this mark, and obviously, this mark has got something to do with finances. Whatever the mark is, it doesn't matter. But I just mentioned before in the last week or so about this new patent that Bill Gates passed, which was 060606, which was a payment system that would work off of various types of marks or readers or whatever. It really doesn't matter what they are, but it was just filed. It was an international patent, and it would allow people to, it could be facial recognition, it could be a fingerprint, it could be something injected into you, it could be a barcode, or even your credit card you already have, for that matter. And then it would act as a payment system so that people could just be automatically paid. You could walk in a store, you walk out, you don't have to go through a cash register. Everything has barcodes on it. And then it just pulls the money out of your account, but it also works for businesses and their employees. They're talking about tracking people down to like 1 foot and watching them second by second, and then paying them for what they actually did based on all these tracking, the cameras, and the whole bit. So it appears to be a tracking system. It doesn't have, to me, it doesn't have anything to do with churches or religion in chapter 13, because only governments have absolute force to force you to have this mark, which operates this payment system. It's a payment system, has everything to do with money, not religion.
Right.
And the force only comes through government. Governments are a force where the papacy and so forth has no ability unless they have an army and they're in control of the world. They would literally have to be the second beast, which is kind of what I was getting at before. If the papacy was coming back as a military in control as this second beast, then you could say that it could be them. But otherwise, no, it couldn't be them. It's a military that's in control of all this. That's what's described.
Well,
so why don't we wrap up now, and we can always come back and do this on the next meeting. In fact, on Sunday, we're doing this Sunday at 11 a.m. is a question and answer period. And we can do that with teachers that want to come on. I've invited people, and of course, Eli, you're invited to come on that. That would be a good time to pick this up, because we're at 2 hours right now.
Okay. Yeah. I'm looking at this. I still think that these two beasts, it does call into question the sixth beast, which had the deadly wound healed. But it's saying that there is another beast in addition to the one that had its wound healed. Now that, I think, it can project into the future, which would be a result of, because the Holy Roman Empire was a very powerful military empire. The Vatican wasn't, but the Vatican ruled over that empire, right? So, but I don't see any reason why you can't project this into the future and talk about all the things you're talking about, David. Okay. All right. This is Revelation 13 has got a lot more to it than I realized. There's no doubt. So anyway, Lily, did we answer any of your questions? Okay. To your satisfaction?
Oh, she's muted. Hold on. Let me unmute her and see if she has some some questions for the end here. Oops. Well, she's probably okay. She's unmuted now.
That settles it for tonight.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Good to talk to you again, Lily.
Again. I think it's some... All right. You too, Eli.
Okay.
We'll see you,
care.
David. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And if anybody else wants to join, they just send me an email at david@angloisrael.com, and I'll get you on once I recognize your ID.
Oh, okay.
And by the way, if you don't know this, and I'm sure you do, you need to update to Zoom 5, which you've probably already done by now.
Okay.
Zoom version 5. They should have sent you an email about that. All right, so it was a good meeting for tonight, and you can come back on Sunday at 11 a.m. will be our question and answer, but you can come back on that one. I'm going to wrap it up for tonight, And I thank everybody for watching, and we'll signing out.